My name is Trento. I am a passionate Christ follower. I have been married to the woman of my dreams for 24 years. I have 2 amazing children. I am a graphic artist and serve at Rocky Peak at Celebrate Recovery. I grew up in a single-family home. Our parents were divorced when I was 3. I have a younger brother and an older brother. By the time I was in grade school, my rebellion really kicked in. There's a lot of school fights, experiment with sex and drugs. I think that really was the part where I was pushing back against my family and my upbringing. We went to church on Christmas and the holidays and was very traditional in that sense. I was blessed in high school to find out that you could do airbrushing on a computer, and that forever changed my life. And in college, it exploded all of the things that I loved: art, music, and sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Earlier on in high school, marijuana was the drug of choice, and then in college, it was experimenting with all kinds of other drugs and psychedelics and alcohol. My core character found its purpose in music and art, and when I was partaking in the world from that artistic side, I felt like I could be somebody and I could do something that had meaning. After college, I moved back to Simi Valley, and I remember my wife to be at the Roxy crowd surfing. And I'm like, that's the woman I'm gonna marry. To save money for my wedding, I justified this job of working in the adult internet industry. And my wife knew about this job. She wasn't okay with that. She was okay with us saving for our wedding. But the damage that was done earlier on because of some of those choices completely separated us. We kind of just glued it all together from the exteriors. Shortly after my son's birth, my daily use of substance increased dramatically, and my career was changing, and that depression of the dot-com bubble breaking and this career that I had starting to fall apart, the only coping mechanisms are just numbing out. I'm hiding those things from my wife because I'm a functioning alcoholic. I can get on the floor and play Legos with my son and take him bike ride and look like a very energetic, happy-go-lucky dad. But my depression stemmed from the housing market crash and the collapse of my financial security blanket. And then once the house was gone, the only thing that I could do every day to just get through seemed to be to consume alcohol. And my alcoholism just shot through the roof, where I was drinking enough alcohol to kill you within a year. I would describe my marriage this way. I plugged into my wife. I charged from her spiritual battery. I did not have a relationship with the Lord. I had one with my wife, who had one with the Lord. She started to find hints. She'd find a bottle of vodka sitting in the freezer in the garage, and she would subtly put a little note there that says, "We love you." The vices in me just ran like monsters. I couldn't put on shoes. I couldn't walk a flight of stairs. I was 150 pounds overweight, and it surely crippled me. That very next day, I went into rehab. Up until that point, I had never, ever, ever been that honest with anybody about what I put in my body. I came out of rehab, a 2-week outpatient program, and that night found out that our bank account was wiped, and my skeletons from my past, the IRS, the taxes, the things that I had been escaping from, finally caught up with me. We were forced to file bankruptcy, and that was me running from my problems rather than dealing with them. At this point, my wife and I had agreed to separate, and I had no other choice but to move in with my mother. I remember feeling like the biggest loser on the planet. My wife had been seeing a therapist, and that therapist mentioned a ministry to her, Celebrate Recovery. And at that point, I had never heard of Celebrate Recovery, and my wife told me I needed to go and find a sponsor if we were going to work or attempt at working to get back together. The first time I walked into a Celebrate Recovery meeting, there was a handful of men sitting around a table, and I felt unbelievably awkward. But it was really the leader of that group who became my sponsor. He was a recovered alcoholic who restored his family. And I thought, that's what I would love to do. How do I do that? And he was like, sit down and keep coming back, kid. Where you been? I remember thinking my wife and I would be better off divorced. She would be happier without me. Until I started to make some amends. after many, many hours crying with her in the backyard and her saying, "I forgive you." All of that shame, all of the nights that I wasn't who I wanted to be, there was a glimpse of hope that you could get that back. Every single step, it seems like it's a cliff. There's no way that I can make another move. And that's exactly what the answer is in the next step. It was Celebrate Recovery and the tools that were foundational in my life. There was far more still alive in me that could come back to life, but the love that was poured into me was the Lord guiding me back to Him. And for the first time, the passion to move towards light rather than darkness was greater. In the course of 3 months, I got my family back together. My wife and I bought a home, and I was baptized at Rocket Peak Church. It seemed like a tsunami of change hit at such a fast pace. I am surely not the man that I used to be, and I have not arrived at where I feel I should be either. But every day, in every way, God is meeting me, picking me up, and taking me to the next right thing.